Support comes from Mosby Building Arts, helping homeowners trade out old windows for modern, energy-efficient windows with curb appeal. Estimates at callmosby.com.
From St. Louis Public Radio. This is the Politically Speaking Hour on St. Louis on the Air. I'm Jason Rosenbaum. One of the most common questions that I hear from listeners is, why does the Missouri General Assembly keep overriding or trying to override voter-approved initiatives? The answer is simple: because they can. There's nothing stopping the legislature from completely repealing voter-approved statutory changes or sending constitutional amendments to Missourians to overturn voter-backed changes to the Constitution. Missouri lawmakers have taken advantage of this reality. They gutted a ballot item regulating dog breeding operations in 2010 and repealed paid sick leave regulations in 2025. A legislative directed amendment in 2020 gutted the voter-backed Clean Missouri State Legislative Redistricting System, and lawmakers are trying this year to get voters to overturn a 2024 abortion rights amendment and a voter-approved prohibition from 2016 on sales taxes for services. But the legislature's free reign may be coming to an end. Later this fall, voters may get a chance to decide the fate of the Respect Missouri Voters Initiative. That constitutional amendment, among other things, makes it much more difficult for legislators to repeal voter-approved changes to state statutes and the Missouri Constitution. Joining us now to talk more about what's in this proposal is Benjamin Singer, the co-founder of the Respect Missouri Voters Coalition. Benjamin, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having us.
Also joining us is Bridget Salberg, an educator who volunteered to gather signatures for the Respect Missouri Voters Initiative. Bridget, welcome to the Politically Speaking Hour on St. Louis on the Air.
Thanks for having us.
And we also have Matt Andrews, the president and business agent of Laborers Local 42. Members of Matt's labor union also volunteered to gather signatures for the initiative. Matt, welcome to the Politically Speaking Hour on St. Louis on the Air.
Thank you.
Benjamin, how did the Respect Missouri Voters Initiative come about?
Yeah, I'm actually going to send it over to Bridget because this has actually been a volunteer-driven initiative from the start.
Okay, let me rephrase that. Bridget, how did the Respect Missouri Voters Initiative come about?
Yeah, in early 2025, we had multiple town halls all across the state of Missouri where over 1,000 Missourians gave input, and it's a grassroots effort that's of, by, and for the people, where we kind of gathered together, made sure that we had the three big points: to require ballot summaries to be fair and clear, to preserve a century-old constitutional freedom to petition, and to make it harder for politicians to change or undo what the people have already voted on. And then it was really off to the races, where all of these volunteers decided in early September 2025 to hit the streets, gather signatures, and we gathered over 367,000 signatures by 2,000 volunteers, which is extremely impressive.
So let's talk about those three pillars a little bit more. The first major aspect of the amendment requires ballot summaries to be, quote, clear, unbiased, fair, accurate, and easy to understand. It also says ballot summaries shall not mislead voters. I'll send it to you, Matt. Why do you think that would be important if that is in the Constitution?
Well, it's an amendment to preserve our century-old constitutional freedom to petition. It ensures citizens have the ability to be a check and balance on the elected officials when they ignore our voices. It also prohibits new laws, making it harder for Missourians to gather signatures or pass initiatives at the ballot box. It makes it harder for politicians to overturn what the people have already voted on.
And the second major part of this initiative is basically banning the legislature from making it more difficult for the initiative petition process to function. This would include something the legislature is attempting to do this year with Amendment 4, raise the threshold to pass a constitutional amendment, which is currently a simple majority. I'll throw this open to any of you. Why do you think this part of the initiative is necessary?
Because Amendment 4 is a politician-led effort to end the majority rule with deceptive ballot language. We think voters are smart enough to see through it and pass Respect Missouri Voters Amendment.
You often hear from Republicans that it's too easy to amend the state constitution. I'm sure you all have heard that at some point in time. I would lightly disagree with that because you do have to spend millions of dollars or thousands of volunteer hours to get it on the Constitution. But when you all hear that, you're going to hear that from Amendment 4 proponents. What's your reaction?
What a lot of people don't realize when they hear this nonsense coming from politicians is politicians put constitutional amendments on the ballot 400% of the time that citizens do. Over 83% of constitutional amendments come from the legislature. And the double standard that politicians are putting into Amendment 4 leaves a simple majority statewide required for politicians to pass a constitutional amendment when they put it on the ballot. But for citizens for whom, like you said, Jason, it's so much harder. We have to gather hundreds of thousands of signatures in church basements and street corners, and we're going to have to pass it with this crazy system they're setting up to end majority rule to make it impossible. So it's total hypocrisy on the part of the politicians who are attacking majority rule.
So those two things I mentioned are very important, but I think the most notable part of this initiative is that the legislature could only change a voter-approved statutory change or an attempt to change a voter-approved constitutional amendment with the support of 80% of the House and Senate and a successful statewide vote. I'll throw it open to anybody here around this glorious table. Why do you think this change is necessary, and what do you think it'll bring to the state?
I think the best part about this legislation is that it ensures that the power stays with the people unless there is that bipartisan agreement at 80% of both the House and the Senate to send it back for a vote. So it really raises the bar, and it makes sure that Missourians' voices are heard.
And I would say that it would also include referendums as well. So the new 80% of the legislative standards would apply to referendums that voters reject. So because Missourians repealed right to work in 2018, the only way for lawmakers to get that issue passed if the Respect Missouri Voters Initiative is approved is to pass that out of the legislature with 80% of the vote and through a statewide vote. I got to ask Matt, how motivating was that for people of your labor union that if this passes, it will make right to work, which is banning employers and workers from paying dues as a condition of employment, really from being resurrected from the legislature?
I think it motivated our members tremendously. Unfortunately, so this time of year, our members are working. If they don't work, they don't get paid. So the vast majority of our volunteers were family members, mothers, daughters, sons. They were out there on behalf of the member collecting signatures because it affects the entire family, not just the member who's out there working.
And labor unions have been active in gathering signatures for this, for a referendum on a congressional map lawmakers approved in 2025, opposition to Amendment 4. Why do you think organized labor has been just so energized to be a part of these ballot initiatives?
Well, we stick to labor issues. We don't concern ourselves with fringe issues or anything specific, but all our volunteers are just that. They're volunteers, because it affects the dinner table. It affects grocery bills. It affects our ability to feed our families.
I want to turn it over to you, Bridget. Respect Missouri voters gathered, I guess, 258,000 of the signatures were from volunteers. I think of 360,000, maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more. What prompted you to get involved with this? Because typically when you see ballot initiatives like this, the people getting signatures are paid signature gatherers. And I'm guessing you weren't paid anything more than just a bottle of water and just your spirit in favor of this initiative.
Not even a bottle of water, actually. Oh. So I'm born and raised in St. Louis County. I'm a Truman State alum. I'm a full-time public school teacher. I'm soon to be a first-time mom. So I have a lot on my plate as it is. And I think that just seeing the last ballot, I felt a passion to say, you know what, enough's enough. I'm sick of politicians overturning what I teach in my classroom, that, your voice matters, your vote matters, and politicians are saying that it doesn't matter, and we're overturning it. So joining this campaign has been a really big passion project of mine.
Why do you think people came up to you and wanted to sign this petition?
Yeah, so I greeted everybody with a friendly smile. I went over those 3 bullet points, and I made sure that people understood that this isn't about Republican, this isn't about Democrat. Independent thoughts are welcome, of course, but it's truly about those 3 points. Require ballot summaries to be fair and clear language, to preserve that century-old tradition to petition and to make it harder for politicians to change or undo what the people of Missouri have already voted on.
Did a lot of people come up to you and just express frustration that they got rid of paid sick leave? They're trying to overturn abortion again. I listed all the things that had happened since 2010. Like, I guess I'll throw this over to Bridget and Matt. Did they come up to you and say, we are sick of this type of legislative behavior?
Yes, I think Missouri voters are starting to pay attention. You're getting a coalition of people looking at it from all different perspectives that are starting to come to the same conclusion that they're being deceived. So I think that was a big motivator for people to get out and sign.
And what about you, Bridget?
Yeah, I actually collected over 530 signatures, and that was the overwhelming majority that people are frustrated by this, that they want their votes to matter, they want their votes to count.
So, Benjamin, let's talk about where Respect Missouri Voters is right now. Your group submitted signatures to Secretary of State Denny Hoskins' office earlier this month. When should we hear a decision about whether it reached the thresholds to make the ballot?
Yeah, our 2,000 volunteers turned in over 367,000 signatures on May 3rd, and we're expecting to hear in August that we will be on the November ballot. We have, a wonderful coalition of Republicans, Democrats, and Independents, so we're confident we can win and persuade enough voters to have a commanding victory to say enough is enough. Politicians should not be allowed to lie to voters with misleading ballot language.
And I alluded to earlier that this concept that it is somehow easy to get on the Missouri ballot with a ballot item is not actually true. You need to get a certain percentage of signatures in 6 out of 8 congressional districts. I guess I can maybe throw it open to all three of you. Because this was really volunteer driven and not necessarily dependent on paid signature gatherers, did that make it more difficult to get to the goals, or did it actually make it easier because you were able to get a lot of people that maybe wouldn't be part of this process before?
I'll let Bridget and Matt answer in a second, but I'll say it certainly required a much greater level of organization. You're not just taking millions of dollars and hiring a firm and saying, go hit these numbers. We had to go out across the state, like Bridget said, and recruit volunteers at these town halls and ask, what do you want to be in this constitutional amendment? Because we really wanted it to be of, by, and for the people. So, taking input and opinions from 1,000 people is certainly a lot harder than taking it from, 1 billionaire or something like that. So we had a high level of organization and structure with volunteer regional field directors across the state, organizing people in their own communities, making this happen. And I will say we're not done. We still have a long way to go, and we want more volunteers to join Matt and join Bridget by signing up at respectmovoters.org.
At this point, the legislature has placed 7 constitutional amendments on the ballot this year. There's also the redistricting referendum that might also be on the November ballot. Is there any fear that this could get lost in the shuffle, or do you think that there's going to be a strong enough and loud enough campaign to make sure that people know this is on the ballot, Matt?
We're confident we can win on any ballot. This is a coalition, like Benjamin said. We have a coalition of voters from every party, independents, and we're confident that voters are starting to pay attention. They're educating themselves, and they're aware that they're being deceived. So we're confident we can win on any.
And I'll say Missouri voters are smart enough to know the difference and to read through the language and to understand that Respect Missouri Voters is really making an effort to make that ballot language clear for everyone on all ballot initiatives.
In the final minute we have, I'll give this to all three of you. Bridget first, then Matt, then Benjamin. What do you think it would mean if this ended up passing in November? Bridget, I'll start with you.
I think it means that voters' voices will matter more and that their votes will count.
Matt.
Yeah, I think it ensures that the lawmakers can't come back and overturn the will of the people. It means their voices aren't being ignored anymore.
Benjamin.
It will finally put an end to the decades of partisan politicians trying to trick voters with misleading and confusing ballot language, and it will allow voters, when we go to the ballot box, to actually know exactly what we're being asked to vote on. And we hope more folks will join us to help make this a reality at respectmovoters.org.
And this is something that I get asked all the time. Because this was submitted as an initiative petition, this could really only go on the November ballot. It cannot go on the August ballot because I don't think it'll be determined whether it got enough signatures yet. So Benjamin is nodding. The radio audience cannot see the nods, but that is what will end up happening if you get enough signatures. Benjamin Singer is the co-founder of the Respect Missouri Voters Coalition. Thank you for joining us today, Benjamin. Bridget Salberg is an educator who volunteered to gather signatures for the Respect Missouri Voters Initiative. Bridget, thank you for joining us today. And Matt Andrews is the president and business agent of Laborers Local 42. Thank you all for joining us today. You're allowed to say thank you back, by the way.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you. And Matt gathered a bunch of signatures too. So this is a group effort.
Congratulations. And you should have gotten a bottle of water for that.
I think I did. I think I did.
The Politically Speaking Hour in St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Thank you for listening. I'm Jason Rosenbaum.
This episode was produced by Jason Rosenbaum.
Our audio engineer is Aaron Dorr. This podcast was mixed and edited by Aaron.
Our executive producer is Alex Hoyer.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations. And leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thanks.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis.
Hi, I'm Laura Hamden, and my colleague Jessica Rogan and I are your daily hosts of the Gateway newsletter. We meet with the editors in the STLPR newsroom every weekday to bring you the top local stories of the day in a quick and easy 6-minute read by 6 a.m. In an age of overwhelm, it's a refreshing, thoughtful take on the news day, if we do say so ourselves. Fine-tune your daily news habit with the Gateway newsletter. Subscribe at stlpr.org/gateway.